Good morning.
Good morning.
What are we celebrating today? What's the big holiday?
Veterans Day.
Veterans Day. What was it before it was Veterans Day? It wasn't Veterans Day before 1954. What did they used to call it? Armistice Day. What happened on Armistice Day? The end of World War I. The war of all wars. So today, we ask when people come up for communion to pick up one of the pink sheets on the stand here behind the tetrapod, because we're going to say special prayers for all of those that have gone before us, protecting us in our great country. So when you come up to communion, please pick up one of the pink sheets. You know, as I read today's gospel message, I thought of the memorable Mr. Rogers song, "Won't You Be My Neighbor?" Everybody remembers that, right? Because I think it's important that we not overly complicate a parable from Jesus that is at the heart profoundly simple. Even little children can understand one of the most important rules in life is simple kindness. A young child hearing this Bible story in Sunday school can grasp its biggest takeaway lesson without too much trouble. Be good to others, show compassion, help those who need help. Of course, the unexpected hero is an interesting twist. The Samaritan assumed a human connection with the unfortunate man lying in the ditch, no matter that it was across social boundaries and cultural differences. No matter that the person he helped under other circumstances might not have wanted to be anywhere near him. He assumed it was important to act kindly and the risk was worth doing it. The point is simple enough. It's the implementation of Jesus' lesson that gets a little tricky. Who is my neighbor? You know, I've been listening to the church's answer to this question my whole life, and I have yet to make any sense out of the answer. The church just keeps saying, everybody, all the time. But there are too many people, too many needs. No one individual can respond to it all. So we are forever guilty and sad and remorseful that we don't do more. And even if we give everything, it relieves none of the guilt or sadness because we still have not healed the world's need. He was going down the road when he came upon a poor man, bloody and beaten off the side of the road. Having compassion, he gathered him up and started carrying down the road. And about a quarter of a mile later, he came upon another man, also beaten and left for dead. So he laid down the first man and picked up the second, and staggering on for a few hundred yards, he returned and picked up the first man and carried him to where he had put the other one down. And looking on down the road, he could see many beaten forms of unfortunate travelers. So he staggered back and forth, carrying now one and then another, until he himself became utterly exhausted. His water was gone. His food was used up. His money already distributed among the beaten forms lying about. And now he himself laid helpless, hoping someone would come down the road with enough resolution to save at least one of them. The sheer number of people needing help is unquestionably overwhelming. It actually makes the priest and the Levite's choice really a little bit understandable, doesn't it? And when we put ourselves on the road from Jerusalem to Jericho and consider all the dangers and liabilities and financial implications, and the fact that if we stop for every person in the road, we'd never get anywhere. And on and on and on. So let's take a deep breath and bring back that simplest of lessons from today's text, kindness. And perhaps cue the Mr. Rogers theme song again, because we can get bound up in the technicalities until everything is absolutely hopeless. Or we can take whatever opportunities we find to do whatever good we are capable of. The story is quite simple. Go find somebody to care about and do it. Over and over in the Gospels, we find Jesus reminding people that saying the right words and knowing the right answers, believing the right beliefs, isn't all there is to it. Jesus doesn't just invite us to think good thoughts. He asks us to do good deeds. He doesn't just ask us to believe in him. He asks us to follow him. And to be fair, that is quite a lot. You don't have to read far in the Gospels to learn that the bar is actually set pretty high for how disciples of Jesus should behave. But God knows that we're not perfect. We're called to be faithful in and through our weaknesses. And again, while faithful discipleship in every area of our lives is a tough calling, maybe some things are as simple as they sound. Like today's invitation, through this parable, simply to show kindness and compassion to someone. Notice the Samaritan didn't set off from Jerusalem to Jericho looking for someone who had been robbed and beaten and needed help, though that would have been an admirable thing to do, and many good people have gone out on just those types of quests. Here in this particular story, our hero simply helped a person in need right in front of him. As Mother Teresa liked to say, help one person at a time, and always start with the person nearest you. In some cases, the person nearest us could quite literally be a beaten or broken person on the side of the road. So it's certainly worth considering what sort of help that we could offer these situations. If we don't feel comfortable giving out cash, can we give food or water, a blanket, a gift card to somewhere that they could sit with a hot cup of coffee? Maybe help with his phone call to find shelter for the night. And in some cases, the person nearest to us needing help could look entirely different. Could be well-dressed, driving a fabulous car, but hiding the fact that she just lost her job, or that he's treated cruelly at home, or that her child is terribly sick and she's hoping against hope that the doctors are wrong. Or the person next to us could be the waitress everyone else has been dumping on all evening. Or the custodian at work whose name no one bothers to learn. Or the bad boy in the supermarket who's being bullied at school. In some cases, it might be someone we wouldn't normally encounter, whether because of race or religion or socioeconomic status. But in the parable universe into which we've been invited by today's text, remember, those strangers could also be the ones helping us out of a bad situation. You know, part of the beauty of parables is that a story can be about several things all at once. How does the story of the Good Samaritan impact us? Not only when we imagine ourselves as pious people leaving the person in the ditch, or when we picture ourselves as a Samaritan, are we brave enough to do what he did? But when we take the third pass through the story and picture ourselves as the one lying beaten by the side of the road, what would it feel like to be the beneficiary of the most incredible, kind, and passionate treatment from someone who couldn't be more different from us? And who could picture in your mind's eye that as a Samaritan coming to our rescue? Is it someone from the other side of the tracks? Is it someone from another racial group, another religion, or another country? Is it someone whose bumper stickers make it blindingly clear that you disagree passionately about everything under the sun? What would it feel like for that person to be the neighbor to us and lift us out of that ditch and give us a ride to the hospital waiting for us in the emergency room while we're bandaged up, and then find a safe place for us to spend the night, pay for it, and keep checking to be sure that we're okay. What would it feel like to receive that much kindness from a stranger? You know, since we're considering whether a broad range of lessons could be contained in a single parable, I've always heard the parable of the Good Samaritan as a story about individuals. An individual who is in need and an individual who steps up to help. You know, I heard a story once from a person who asked, shouldn't we do something about the state of the road between Jerusalem and Jericho? If folks traveling there are being robbed and beaten and left to die, in addition to helping the neighbor, shouldn't we also be concerned about repairing the road? They were, of course, speaking metaphorically. It wasn't potholes that concerned them. It was systematic injustice and the kinds of economic and political and social realities that leave people especially vulnerable as they make their way along life's journey. I wonder if Jesus enjoyed speaking in parables, because each story allows us to ask a whole range of questions like these. And I wonder how you and I most need to hear the story of the Good Samaritan today. My dear brothers and sisters, watch for signs of God's kingdom, to keep on the lookout for these parables, these little parables and lessons from God as we go about our lives every day. I wonder whether you and I might find ourselves stumbling across the Good Samaritan parable this week. Finally, I wonder also where we ourselves might be called to practice a fearless neighborliness that would make both Mr. Rogers and Jesus Christ himself enormously pleased with our actions. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever.
Slava Jesus Christus.
Hallelujah.